everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod for NCAA tournament pregame show sponsored by Fanduel Sportsbook. Fanduel, of course, is your go-to source for betting on the sports you love to watch, whether it's college basketball or another sport. What you want to stick to the money line or just go to a parlay, you'll find all the odds you need on the Fanduel app. Easy to download. You can get started right away. It's tournament time, so you'll be able to find all the bets you could ever desire and then some over on the Fanduel app. Head on over today. You'll be glad you did. Also, don't forget to participate in our Fanduel Player of the Game. You can do that at slido.com. And then hashtag is TFF So big thank you to all of you who support the show. Please, if you enjoyed the MSU content, please consider becoming a monthly supporter either on Patreon or Substack, or you certainly can do it on YouTube as well. You can join the other supporters we have on Patreon, like at the Between Cleaves level, Bill Church, Brian O'Donnell, Michael Bosnick, Chad Hickey, Mike Huntoon and Scott Driscoll, Draymond Green supporters, Doug Robinson, Adam Walzak, Dan Rankin, Jim L., Paul Marsh, and Greg Bamer, and all the Scott Skyle supporters as well. And then those over on Substack, Rich Wagenheim, Kenneth Cremett, Roger Bronsink, Al, Michael Emmerich, Joan BT, and Jim Rainey. If you want to support the show, please head over to our support page at tffinots.com/support to get the links. Not only do you get an ad-free version of the show sent to you, but if you're at the green, the Draymond Green level or above, you get the whole world to know how awesome you are from time to time. Okay, Rod, we finally made it to the postseason. The NCAA tournament, Michigan State's a 3 seed. Will face the 14 seed North Dakota State Bison on Thursday afternoon in Buffalo, New York. We can only hope this is the first of 6 stops for the Spartans en route to Indy. This will be the record's 28th straight appearance for Michigan State, making it longer than any other team. I've seen a bunch of people commenting that Kansas is actually 36 years, but they actually did not appear one year, or it was vacated, so their streak ended because they were cheating. I think Gonzaga is 1 spot behind. I think just to give people a sort of, I guess, just an idea of how impressive the streak is. So, of course, Michigan State 28 years, Gonzaga 27 years. The next best is Purdue at 11, then right. Houston, Tennessee at 8, and then Alabama, Illinois, Texas, and UConn at 6 years in a row. So it just shows you that level of consistency is extremely rare in making the NCAA tournament.
I would argue it's going to be rarer still as we go forward because at least unless and until we get a different system in place, because the current environment pretty much guarantees that teams that are going through serious overhauls of their rosters year after year after year, the odds are good that one year you're going to crap out.
Sure.
That's just reality,
Yeah. Well, and you could point out to like teams like Kentucky, even in the past, like, well, they have all the one and dones, they have the great players or whatever. Well, they missed, not often, but Duke, they would miss every once in a while. Duke missed once, right? I mean, weird stuff happens.
Carolina's missed. I mean, the even the powerhouses, the traditional elite of the elite are not immune from this. And it's just how it is. And so, yes, it is underappreciated how, and here's the other thing. Within that 28, there was only 1 year, that Michigan State had any reason to doubt or to be concerned about inclusion. And in fact, heading into that, we didn't think it turned out they had reason to be
right.
concerned.
We thought they were safely.
We didn't think so. So the anxiety that is a given for so many programs, you haven't felt in 3 decades.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at Indiana. The last 10 years, they've made it twice. Crazy. But just
no story is as illustrative of all the concerns that swirl around modern basketball and specifically around what will happen with Michigan State when Tom Izzo does decide to retire, whenever that is. No story is more illustrative of the pitfalls of it all than Indiana.
Yeah.
People say, well, I've heard people say as recently as this week, I'm not worried. Michigan State's got a ton of money to devote to basketball. Yeah. Nobody spends more in Indiana.
Yeah.
What's it gotten them? 2 out of 10.
Yeah, I saw somewhere on today someone had voided all the budgets for
Yes,
the basketball programs in
but
college, and
you got
Indiana
to
was
keep in
32.
mind they were number one. That's
Yeah,
not
by a
surprising.
lot.
Yeah, Michigan State was seventh, I think, but
Mhm.
that's operating budget. That does not include
Yeah,
NIL.
exactly.
So it's real. That number was really close to pointless in terms of
Yeah,
understanding what goes into putting rosters together. But
absolutely.
in Indiana's case, they've also spent big on that side too. So it goes to show you, and you could say, well, but Indiana's made some bad hires. Yeah, they made, you can argue they made a mistake in elevating Mike Davis way back when. Or you can argue that the Mike Woodson hire was a disaster, and I'd agree. But three of the hires they've made over that period, Kelvin Sampson, Tom Crane, and Arch Miller, were universally lauded.
Yeah.
Everybody thought those were home run, slam dunk hires, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
So it's very, very tough, very tough, and to maintain consistency. And if you're a Michigan State fan, well, here's the thing: people that are whatever, I guess, in their late 30s and younger, have no way of understanding. They
Yeah,
don't.
right. How
They
exciting it
just
was to
don't.
see your team make
They
the
just don't.
tournament. Yeah,
They have
I know.
no idea. Cannot actually relate, because that is something I think you have to feel. You can read
Oh, yeah.
about it. You can think you understand it. You don't understand it.
Yeah. A lot like marriage. Until you actually live it, you don't know what it's
Right.
the other streak there is very impressive. Of course, is Gonzaga. A totally different sort of situation. You could say, well, it's easier because they're in a conference where they, can dominate that conference. But they had to build that program up to the point where they can dominate and
Yeah.
and recruit at a level. Now they sort of had a hack that they were getting some international players before the rest of the country sort of caught on. They had sort of but those are workarounds that they did, and of course they
Well,
had to perform well. And so hats off to them as well.
I'll get and I'll give them this. You're right. They did have some things that they've exploited, and part of it is their league is usually has. This year they happen to have two other good teams.
Right. Usually one
Oftentimes
other.
it's only one, St.
Yeah.
Mary's, and that's not even been true the entirety of their streak.
Right.
It's been
Just
true
the end.
the last 15 years or so, I'd say.
Right.
But the fact is, Gonzaga had to get to a point that they could take advantage of those things. I would say the first, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years of that streak, they had to build that thing into a good enough program that they could then be in position to take advantage of some of these things. So that was earned, and it's been very impressive. In my lifetime, at least, it's the most impressive building job I've ever seen. The only one that ever rivaled it for a brief period of time was Butler, but we've seen Butler really has not been able to sustain it.
Right.
Then you talk about programs like Xavier that have been good, nowhere close to Gonzaga. They are the ultimate American dream sort of story in terms of what they've done in college basketball over the last 30 years. I mean, I may have mentioned this here before. I went to law school with a guy who played at Gonzaga in the 80s. And he was right after John Stockton. So for a long time, at the point that I knew him, that was the only claim to fame that school had, was that John Stockton had played there. And I don't believe they ever went to a tournament when he was on their team. It was just that he had happened to play there.
Yeah.
So I remember Gonzaga when they were nothing. They're total non-entity. And to see what it's become, it's remarkable. But both Gonzaga and Michigan State, they have different situations, but both of those streaks extremely impressive.
Yeah. I guess Gonzaga's done it with two coaches, because I can't remember who was before that. Few
before Few, it was Dan Monson.
Dan Monson. I was like, I knew there's an M somewhere.
He became coach at Minnesota, and then later, until fairly recently, Long Beach State. But he did a little time in East Lansing. He was the son of Don Monson, who was on Judd Heathcote's staff the year they won the national championship.
All right. Okay. That's a nice tie-in.
So,
well, let's talk about this game. Let's talk about this game then. It's Thursday afternoon. Of course, North Dakota State won the regular season and the tournament for the Summit League. They're 27-7 overall, 14-2 in the league. They're 113th in KenPom. So what's interesting is it's kind of hard to get a comparable, like, how the question is, how good is this team? But they're obviously 14 seed. We have the metrics, but they didn't play any really tough teams. They played Minnesota as an exhibition game, I think, for whatever that's worth. They got steamrolled by 40 from Minnesota, but I don't know what that really means. So against top 100 teams, they're just 1-1, which is, they played St. Thomas in their conference twice and split the games.
St. Thomas, until very recently, they were not a top 100 team. They barely squeaked under. It was until about the last week or so of the season, North Dakota State was 0-0 against top 100s.
So, it's kind of hard to say who they are or how good they are. They're coached by Dave Richmond. He's in his 12th year. They've won 62% of the games under him as head coach, 61% of the games in the Summit. This is their third trip to the NCAA tournament. Of course, they missed a COVID year where they probably would have won as well, or gone as well.
They would have. They actually had won.
Yeah, they'd won the
their
league right before it got.
That was over before the world shut down. Yeah.
And I guess the only other thing about that is he used to have one of his coaches is over is a friend of Tim Miles, who is, of course, familiar with Michigan State. So I imagine there'll be some conversations between him and Tim Miles, like what to expect for what it's worth.
I think it's broader than that. He's actually got two former head coaches on his staff. One of them is Saul Phillips, who was his boss at North Dakota State, and he left that job to take the Ohio job many years ago. And now he's come back to work for his old assistant. And Tim Miles, who we know from his years at Nebraska, and Tim Miles also recently as last year was running the program at San Jose State. If you remember, they came in for the honor of playing Michigan State, and Miles was coaching them. So I think what's interesting about that, though, is that you do not typically see a mid-major with two former head coaches on the staff. The only reason I mention it is, besides the obvious, that Miles does have familiarity with Michigan State as recently as last year. So that's probably at least helpful with the margins. But just having that much experience in their coaching staff I think is a positive for North Dakota State. The other thing that's worth mentioning, and you'll see when we get into the players, they have done a remarkable job of player retention and development. They've added some portal guys, but not a lot. Most of their team are guys who have been there a year, 2 years, 3 years. And that is something you do not see very often. So those two things, which basically come down to the same word, experience, I think argue in favor of North Dakota State and why as a reason that they're where they are. Yeah.
Well, I think that, and it's probably been not recent enough that any of those players have actually made the NCAA tournament, right? I think it's been a couple of years.
It's been 7 years, actually.
Yeah. So, because I feel like it's been South Dakota State for a couple years in a row.
No tournament experience, but I think we talk about it with Michigan State all the time. So why wouldn't it be true for North Dakota State as well? When you've got that much experience playing together and in the system, playing for these coaches the way they want to play, that's valuable.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what North Dakota State is. You want, with the transfer portal and people getting snatched away, you wonder on some level if the fact that they haven't played any sort of higher level teams has helped them retain players. I don't know what it's like the last couple of years, but because there's not a lot of people watching Summit League. Not to say you're totally, invisible, that they wouldn't see you in the Summit League tournament, or we now have, and maybe there's a new development. Auburn's got assistant coaches at the Atlantic Sun Conference is hanging out at their tournament, their conference tournament, clearly recruiting players for next year.
Well, Jim Comparoni made the point today, and who knows, he may end up being right, that all three of North Dakota State's starting guards with this team would be attractive high major portal candidates.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean Michigan State high major.
Right.
But I think as he put it, he's like, there's somebody on that team that could probably help Penn State. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
wow.
it's remarkable that at least to this point, they've been able to keep these guys. Whether that continues, anybody's guess. But I think you're onto something. If God forbid, if North Dakota State pulls this off and they go and they get a lot of attention from it, might that mean that they end up losing some of these guys? Maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can only hide Fargo for so long, and eventually people are going to find you. So let's talk about their offense. We have 124th ranking overall, which is pretty good for a mid-major like this. Their relative strengths, they're a good 3-point shooting team. Not fantastic, but they're very solid. They're 35.7%, putting them 73rd in the nation, 3-point shooting. Offensive rebounding at 77th. And then they don't shoot great at the line. They're 71.7%, but they don't get there very often either. And they're top third in 3-point field goal attempts to field goal attempts, which means that they tend to have more threes than twos, in general, like more than most teams, but they're not like super heavy. They're not like at Wisconsin, which is like 5th, and Illinois is they're both Illinois and Wisconsin are top 10, I think, for 3-point attempts to regular field goal attempts. So anyway, they don't play that way.
Yeah. This team, they take 43% of their shots from 3. So that's 121st in the country. They're barely in the top third.
Yeah.
Their 3-point shooting is a strength. I will note it's 0.2 of a point and 7 spots worse than Michigan State. For those who think that Michigan State still somehow believe Michigan State can't shoot. Michigan State is 66th in 3-point percentage in the country out of 360 some Division I teams.
Well, Rod, to stop you real quick, I feel like a large reason people feel that way is because there's variability in, you have a game where you shoot 45, 48%, and they have a game where you shoot 30%.
Correct.
But which just proves your point as far as the extra variability in these 3-point shooting teams. You look at the numbers like, oh, they shoot 38%. Well, some games you 30, some of you are 42, right? And I think people forget that variability is a real thing. And, maybe some teams have less variability, which is possible, but probably with 3-point shooting, it's going to be a little bit more, up and down.
If you go back to and I'm working from memory here, it's an anecdotal impression. So perhaps I'm wrong, but I don't think so. The 2016 Michigan State team that was the number 1 3-point shooting team in the country, they shot something like 43% as a team, which is insane. I don't remember that team having a lot of off days. They might have had 1 or 2.
Right. I agree.
But there was pretty remarkable consistency. You'd almost have to shoot that. 43% is off the charts.
Yeah.
So you really wouldn't be able to afford many 20% days and keep your number up there.
Yeah.
36%. Yeah, you can do that. 43. No. But it is true. And that, it's, in my opinion, it's of any kind of macro thing that teams do, 3-point shooting and the corollary 3-point defense is the most variable. It just is, which stands to reason. You are trying to do something in shooting a basketball from further away from the rim. It's going to be more variable in terms of your success. It just tracks, right?
And then let's move on to the and I guess the offensive rebounding is 77th in comparison to what Michigan State's 6th or 5th or something, fourth now, and 4th in offensive rebounding. So big gap here, but a 77th is not terrible,
still good.
But especially for mid-major, it's probably pretty good. Although again, if you're not playing the highest competition, you can kind of goose your numbers a little bit potentially because you're playing generally lower competition, right?
And this is not a big team. They've got a couple of Big Ten sized guys, and that's kind of it. This is a small team. So given that, it's impressive as well that they've been able to do that. They're a very good rebounding team at the mid-major level. They're not, I saw someone, again, it was Jim Comparoni, I think, was saying that his general impression is he doesn't think this team is quite as good as Bryant was last year, MSU's first round opponent and a 15 seed last year. If you remember, that Bryant team was a rebounding menace.
Yeah.
This is not that team. They're a good rebounding team. They're not what Bryant was.
So let's look at the other side of the field, or the court, I should say. On defense, they're also 124th, which is pretty remarkable. They're 124th in offense and defense.
Yeah.
So good rebounding team. They're 17th in defensive rebounding. So excellent. I guess you'd almost say elite, right? Your top 20.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't foul much on defense. They're 48th. And so I think comparison makes you say it's what, the 70s or so, something like that. And
the 80s, I think
80s. Yeah. Okay. So, and the one thing they probably more known for is their turnover percentage. They're 62nd in turnover percentage. So they're looking to turn you over. 80th in steals. So, large portion of those turnovers are steals. They're 150th against the threes. They're really bad against twos. They're 221st, and which goes along to your point that they don't have a whole lot of size. 199th in blocks, again, goes to the size. And so just on paper, you kind of think, well, if you get in and actually get a shot off, you're going to be a pretty decent chance of success. It's just, can you hang on to the ball and complete your possession?
Well, this is the thing. Their defensive success, such that it is dependent largely on two things. It's turning you over, and it's that they don't tend to give up many second chances. That's okay. That's not a bad base to work from. But when you struggle to limit opponent shooting success, it can be tough. They are not a trapping, full court pressure team much of the time. They'll occasionally play it, but this is basically a man-to-man defense, aggressive man-to-man. Wouldn't be surprising to see them playing up on Michigan State in the half court, trying to disrupt things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if Michigan State can survive possessions to the point that they get a shot up, odds are good that some good things will happen. Also, the fact you said that they don't foul a lot, that helps too. And it's a nice line to be able to walk. If you can be pretty aggressive defensively, but yet not foul, that says something about, I think, not just the players you've got, but also the caliber of your coaching, that you're able to do that. They have done that.
Right. So as far as pace, they're 181st in average length of offensive possession. So they're kind of right in the middle. 237th overall. So they tend to slow people down defense, which doesn't surprise you if you think of someone just kind of pressuring you out of the perimeter. It might take a little bit to get going. And I guess, just going back to offense, we just pretty well balanced as far as their scoring. When we go through the lineup, that'll sort of become evident, and also decent shooters, which again, is not surprising because they're a pretty decent shooting team.
Yeah, this is so here's the thing. They're not crazy Wisconsin, Illinois style 3-point shooting, but they do take, a little more than average. It's balanced. 5 players on this team have had the combination of making at least 35 threes on the season while shooting it at least 37%. So that says they've got guys that have been efficient shooting the ball. And that's an issue that you're not talking about loading up on 1 or 2 guys. It's a lot of guys that provide them that. I have not in my, I really had to scramble to find, it was harder than I'd expected to find extended footage of North Dakota State. I mean, even I couldn't get the entirety of the Summit Championship game because it's not on ESPN anymore. It rolls off.
Oh, really?
And,
Okay.
just couldn't find it. But I was able to find enough that I think I got a sense of, because I did not see them in the regular season. They've got some guards with reasonable quickness, and there will be some drive and kick, but this is not the kind of team that I was worried about. And it doesn't mean they can't beat Michigan State. I'm just saying what really worried me was either a team with just an insanely good pick and roll operator who can get into the lane and kick to shooters. They got a little bit of that, not on the level that we've seen in the Big Ten. The other concern was if they had two guards who were both, equally dynamic with the ball, could get their own shot, a la Wisconsin or Ohio State. They don't really have that. What they've got is a very balanced offensive team that shoots it well, takes reasonable care of the basketball, rebounds well, has some flaws defensively for sure, but not the kind of matchup I was worried about that might put Michigan State in a lot of jeopardy potentially on the defensive end.
All right, this is we'll talk about FanDuel a little bit again. And so again, NCAA tournament time, there are so many bets, crazy amounts. We were talking about the other night with the show, the bracket reveal. You can vote. You can bet on a team making the Final Four. You can bet on a team not making the Final Four or any other round. And so it's all available there, of course, money lines and over the lines. But the nice thing is the NCAA tournament. So as soon as the brackets are out, I'm sure even before game times are out, they've got odds in these because, of course, this has got to be the number one college basketball betting. I mean, I can only imagine 75% of the money that's wagered on college basketball is probably in these 3 weeks. I would imagine.
It might be. I bet it's higher than that. It's
maybe
the
90%.
The NCAA tournament I believe this is accurate, is the number 2 moneymaker for Las Vegas sports books behind the Super Bowl.
All right. Well, then there you go. So, and I imagine probably a good portion of it's this first week, just with the first.
Absolutely.
Because I think, after that,
the action
people's teams are out or whatever.
The action's the first 4 days.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. Well, anyway, so let's talk about a little action for Michigan State. We've got the opening line. I have on my FanDuel app here. It's Michigan State's a 16.5-point favorite over North Dakota State. And then the over-under is 143.5. What do you think about those numbers?
I think the over-under is solid because this is not a team that plays fast generally. And I've got to think they're going to try to keep the pace limited.
Sure.
Tim Miles certainly will have direct insight as to what you are dealing with. Yeah. If Tim Miles was not on that staff, I would be of the belief that, North Dakota State may not know what hit them. But I would think, and it doesn't, there's always a difference between being told or even seeing it on film and then living it.
Yeah.
As to what you're dealing with. So I don't think it means Michigan State can't get a transition game going. I'm just saying, I think North Dakota State has a better chance than I would have otherwise given them for slowing it down some because of his presence on that staff. That somebody involved in their operation has direct experience with what that's like and can hopefully for them impart that. I think that over-under number I would probably – man, it's hard because I could see Michigan State. Well, I could see Michigan State being responsible for blowing the number away because they just might be so efficient shooting the ball. But I think it's set in the right spot. What did you say it was? 143.5?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I might go under.
We offer some really hard hitting advice.
Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, really that's why it's set at 143.5, right? Because it's the right.
They did their job.
The right number.
They did their job. I'd say I'd probably would be inclined to go for the under, and 16.5. That's a lot. I think it's possible that Michigan State covers, but I probably would take North Dakota State in the points because my gut tells me something more like 12. Somewhere in that range.
What was the Bryant score? Because maybe the Bryant ballooned at the end.
They got blown out. They got blown out a little bit. I can tell you. Hold on.
It was a close game until the last 8 minutes or something, wasn't it?
Let's see. So 25. Yeah, Michigan State won that by 25. That was not a 25-point game.
It did not feel that way. Wow. I didn't think it was. I couldn't remember.
Well, that by 25. They beat New Mexico by 8. They beat Ole Miss by 3, and then lost. How much did they lose to Auburn by?
Oh, that's good for me.
Tell me what it was.
Yeah. I think it was close. I think it was like 5 points or something, wasn't it?
6. Very close. Yeah. Something tells me most Michigan State fans would say double that.
Right. Because you thought, they hit it. But I remember thinking that they hit just a couple of threes. Some, they missed the.
They had a chance.
So many.
They were digging out of a hole pretty much the whole game, but they did have a shot late. If one more three had fallen,
Yep.
they had a chance. But anyway.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit rich for me. Again, the reason I don't have Michigan State getting out of this region, and I have not officially put my picks in, but I just don't trust this team enough to get out of this region. I mean, I think they could. I just don't trust them enough.
It's not unreasonable, but I guess I would say that about everybody.
I know, and that's the problem.
Except maybe Duke, and with Duke, with the injury, can you trust them? I mean, seriously, if you're a Louisville fan, Louisville is the 6th seed, but they are inside. There's this. You get all kinds of these. No Final Four team or no champion has ever not, and it just gets to be a bit much. But one that I do put a little bit of stock in is you must be top 25, both offense and defense. Well, Michigan State just got there with that game against UCLA. They're 24th in offense. But you know who else is there? Louisville, who's a 6th seed and has lost, I believe, 11 times this year.
Well, they were really, they were undefeated for a while early in the season.
Yeah, and they've had injuries, and there's some reasons.
Yeah.
But if you're a Louisville fan, are you coming in this thinking your team is anything but inconsistent? If you're a Kansas fan, you don't even know how many minutes Darren Peterson's going to play. Is he going to play 30? Is he going to play 2? Is he going to play 0? You don't know. UConn, been very up, and UConn lost 2 games in the last 3 weeks to Creighton and to Marquette, to teams who not only weren't NCAA tournament teams, they weren't even close. That's on top of getting waxed by St. John's by 20 in the Big East Championship. So how can a UConn, trust me, I know a UConn fan. He doesn't think they're consistent. So nobody's consistent. I'm not saying that makes Michigan State superior. What I'm saying is Michigan State's problems are, to one extent or another, everybody's problems.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Arizona and I guess Michigan. I love you. I'm going to use that for eternity. Michigan fans have latched onto that. Tom Izzo's press conference after the first game at Breslin, where he said, Michigan played good, I guess. I love it. But anyway, Michigan and Arizona maybe are your 2 teams. Even Florida. Florida was terrible through the first 2 months of the season.
Right. And they felt like they're rolling, and then they just got smashed by Vanderbilt.
They just got waxed. So, this idea that there's some team out there that's magically been consistent. No. So Michigan State's problems are the same as everybody else's. So, that doesn't give them an advantage, but it also means if anybody's citing for me that's the definitive reason, I would just say, I mean, you could feel that way and you might well be right in the end, but I would just say, for me, that's not a separator because it's true of everybody. And, like I say, somebody's got to win these games. So somebody's going to find consistency, even if they've been inconsistent the whole way up to this point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in some ways you only have to be consistent for 6 games. It's not that hard to do. Maybe if you're top seed, just 5 games.
Most of the teams that are, say, at least a top 4 seed, and you might even be able to go a line or 2 lower than that, have had runs of 3 weeks where they were playing very well.
Yeah. Well, and I always
State had it for 8 weeks, 10 weeks.
Yeah. Well, and my problem with watching Michigan State, and when you've watched them through the course of a year, you've seen everything. You've seen all the warts. You've seen all the good runs, bad. So whatever's happens, you're like, oh, I've seen this before. The slow start. Here we go. Or whatever it might be, because everything has happened. and that sort of goes to the point of Michigan State. This is their 28th, straight NCAA tournament. We've kind of seen everything. I mean, I mentioned that last show. We've seen first round exits. We've seen national championships and everything in between, and from everywhere. So it's not like from teams
I've seen
we thought
a 7 seed Michigan State go to a Final Four.
You've seen teams that should make it, and teams that should make it, not make it. So you that's just, if there's enough, you're gonna have a lot of variance when you have a lot of opportunities. The key, of course, is they have an opportunity every year to do something, which every team can do.
And by and large, when you look at when you look at the not just the consistency of being there, but when you drill down and look at what Tom Izzo's teams have done overall in the NCAA tournament, it is remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I mean, he's had, 8 Final Fours. He's had 3 others, so it would be 11 Elite Eights. So that's 1 out of every 3 years. A little better clip than that, actually. They're getting at least to an Elite Eight. Think about that. Think about all the programs. You just said Indiana's made the tournament 2 times in 10 years.
Yeah, right. No, I know. That's Indiana.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that.
But they've only won natty, Rod. Only one natty. Yeah. So, all right. Well, people have that kind of standard. I don't know what to tell you. All right. This is a quick reminder, of course. Join our bracket competition. It is free. Nudge printing gift prizes for the winners. You can go over to tffinots.com/contest, or you can go to poolhost.com, and then just search for Tiff Knots. That'll also a way to find it too. If you've already done it, you should have gotten an email from Poolhost. It may not say that it's for
I
our
did
bracket
not get an email, and I've done it. So
you should. Maybe it's in your spam.
Check.
Go check your spam.
Pool host.
Yep.
Sorry.
Pool host. The only weird thing about the scoring is you get extra points for predicting upsets. So you pick a 12 or 5, you get the 1 point for the first round, plus you get the 7 for the upset. So just kind of makes things a little bit different, especially early on. Later on, the bonuses for the upsets don't help you quite as much, but they definitely do the first 2 rounds, or maybe even 3. Anyway, head on over to tiffnuts.com/contest. You'll find the link there for Pool Host, and join us. Of course, it closes when the tournament starts. And yes, the tournament does not start until Thursday, despite what the NCAA insists is actually Tuesday, Wednesday. Those it of course starts for them, but for real people, for all those purposes, it starts.
I'm going to note this. We have only 11 picks entered so far, and we have 210 participants. So, Pete, I haven't made mine either. So
I haven't done either.
I'm coming from not a very high perch here, but yeah.
I only say that generally these contests, like a term paper, they all seem to be happening within the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That tends to be when the most work gets done the last day. So I expect most of it to be done by Wednesday night, but head on over today. You'll be glad you did. Another thing you'll be glad you did is going to the Squeegee Squad Grand Rapids. Actually, we totally missed the Brothers Just Gutters. We probably add them up. I'll have to add them in. So, of course, reminder that it is spring. We've had, I don't know where you are in the state, if you're south of the up north line, which is usually like Big Rapids, Clare and stuff, you have got a lot of rain the last 2 days. And so make sure those gutters are functioning properly. Don't forget you get 15% off simply by mentioning Final Four. It's 10% when you mention Final Four. All discombobulated. 10% when you mention Final Four when you get your estimate for Brothers Just Gutters. You can do that at our website. The Final Four is not the schedule.com/support. Greg or Kurt will hook you up. They'll take care of whatever might be wrong with your gutters. They can replace them, repair them, whatever it might be, whether it's your home or your business. Make sure you have them take care of things. And so they're going to sponsor the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter. And of course, Rod will tell us who that is, which will be very interesting since I don't know who it's going to be. Once we get through the starting lineup and the reserves for North Dakota State. All right, so we'll begin with their starters, and Andy Stefanovic, a 6'2 sophomore. He's in second year, averaging 9.2 points a game on 42, 39, and 90 shooting. Leads the team in assists at 5 a game with a 2.5 to 1 assist turnover ratio, and is also second on the team in steals, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier as far as turnover creation.
Yeah, good player. He's one of those guys that Comparoni was talking about that might be attractive to a high major. You can think of him as maybe a little bit of a cut rate Braden Smith. So by that, I mean, he's a skilled player. Obviously, you look at the shooting numbers, it tells you that he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and he's, reasonably 5 assists per game is solid. Good ratio. Comes up with steals, but he's not a tremendously athletic player. This is not a guy that I think is going to, unless Michigan State is just playing some god-awful defense, which is possible after what we just saw. But unless they're doing that, this is not a guy that I worry about as a Dent Boyd style havoc maker. He's not that kind of player athletically.
And then we have Damari Wheeler-Thomas, 6-foot junior, who's in his third year at North Dakota State. He is the leader of the team in scoring at 14.4 points a game, shooting 40, 39, and 76, averaging 4.5 free throws a game, and also 2.7 assists per game.
He's the one guy who's kind of got the athleticism to he's quick.
That dynamism that you're talking about?
Yeah, a little bit. But again, he's not the top. It would be unusual. When I watch them, a lot of their 3-point looks they get just with good perimeter ball movement. It's not I didn't see a ton of drive and kick, but he would be the one guy who maybe can 4.5 free throw attempts a game is pretty good. So that tells you that he is able to get into the teeth of the defense a little bit. So he would be the guy most likely to create problems.
And then we have Travion Carson, a 6'3" JUCO transfer. He's in his first year in Fargo. He's averaging 12 points a game, shooting 48, 38, and 80. So you're seeing those really good shooting numbers from all these guards here. Averaging 6.4 rebounds a game, which leads the team, coming from the 6'3" guard position or wing. And his 2 of those are offensive a game, which, for a team that shoots a decent amount of threes, it does not that surprising when we get some offensive rebounding. He also leads the team in steals at 63.
Yeah, he's also second in assists. So I think there's a good case to be made that Carson is their most impactful all-around player because he's doing things at a high level in pretty much every phase. The problem, he's got in a matchup with Michigan State is that he's probably matching up with Cohen Carr. So defensively, I think for him, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, giving up size and it'll be interesting to see what Michigan State does. Well, I guess we'll talk about that later, but I think it's pretty obvious what we think the strategy should be. The moving to the 4 position, we got Marquis Strickland, 6'6", fifth-year senior, transfer from Western Michigan, also played at St. Louis. He's averaging a little under 12 points a game, 3.5 rebounds a game, shooting 60% from the floor, and shockingly 48% from the line.
Yeah, he's only taken 1 3 this year, and he missed it. So this is the one guy in that starting lineup who's not a serious 3-point threat. Everybody else is. Izzo mentioned today that he's trying to get DJ Stevens, who just got let go from Western Michigan, to come along with MSU on their run this year. And that would be interesting. Izzo has talked about Strickland. He remembers him. He's a decently athletic guy at 6'6", 220. He's undersized for the 4, but that's going to that'll be an interesting matchup with him against Jackson Kohler. One thing I would say is thank God he doesn't shoot the jumper well.
Right.
Because if he was truly a stretch guy at that spot, that's where you maybe start to get worried about what that defensive matchup might look like. But I actually think Jackson can hang in there okay.
Yeah, because especially if you have a 5 who's moving around a lot, then you've got to question what you're going to do with Cooper. I mean, it's pretty obvious you got Cooper who can move around a lot, or obviously a Ward. But so finally, at the 5, we've got Trayson Anderson. He's their size, 6'9", 240 pounds, sophomore, averaging 10.4 points a game, 5.4 rebounds a game, shooting 50, 37, 68. So he is a stretchability, but again, probably very helpful for Michigan State. They've got Carson who can move out on the perimeter and guard.
Yeah, he's very much a stretch guy. Decent rebounder, decent size on a team that doesn't have much of that. So he's been a nice, and again, a guy who's a sophomore, he's in his second year in the program. So you see through most of this what the MO is. They've developed guys in-house and gotten better, and Anderson is one of those guys.
So moving on to the reserves, we got Tay Smith, 6'2" senior. He's in his first year in Division I. He's averaging a little under 8 points a game, shooting 40, 39, and 77, and plays about half the game, 20 minutes.
Yeah, another similar player to the guys who were starters, except he's maybe a little less of a playmaker, but definitely a good shooter.
Then Noah Federson, 6'10", 240-pound junior, so he's a reserve big. He's in his third year of the program, averaging a little under 10 points, 9.5 points a game, 5.1 rebounds a game, plays about 21 minutes. So not starter minutes, but kind of quite a few. He's shooting 51, 29, 81. So you a little bit see a drop off there in the outside shooting.
He was the Summit League sixth man of the year. And there's a case to be made that he might actually be, although his numbers are a little bit lesser, he might actually be the better big man than Anderson. It's just they don't play them together very much. Little bit here and there, but not a ton. But Fedderson's a good kind of traditional big man. The 3-point shooting number is not great, but he will take them. So you can't entirely relax.
Well, and you worry about a guy shooting 81% from the line that maybe he's going to have a day where he's going to
has a game, right?
Yeah. Then we have Emil Skida, 6'5" junior transfer from Sacramento State. He played his first year in college at Central Michigan. He's averaging a little under 4 points a game, plays 12 minutes, shooting 56, 29, and 40. Obviously, limited volume because he's not scoring much.
Yeah, and both he and the next guy we'll mention, I think it's a strong possibility we'll see them just because a game like this is going to take a lot out of North Dakota State physically. But he's not, I think he's only played in 23 of their games, so it's not an every game kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. And finally, we have Anthony Smith, 6'1" freshman, averaging 3.1 points a game, plays about 10 minutes. He's shooting 38, 23, and 92.
So finally, a smaller player who doesn't shoot the ball well, but he's a
right.
freshman, and eventually they think he'll be a guy who can play on-ball minutes for them at some point. But again, it's when he plays, he gets about 10 minutes a night, but he doesn't always play.
It's very funny because looking at all these shooting numbers for three, I feel like almost everybody shoots better than the team average of 35.7% or something like that. So clearly they had some of these guys who couldn't shoot have taken enough and not made them, I guess. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Fedderson, Skida. Yeah. Smith. Yes, yeah. Exactly. Because you're right. Everybody else seems to be hovering in that 2 to 3% better than their team average.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of interesting how that works that way. All right. So I know you haven't been crushing tape on North Dakota State. You've just seen part of them. So who do you have as a player Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter?
I'm going to go with the leading scorer, Damari Wheeler-Thomas. Now, he doesn't lead by a lot. This is a balanced offensive team. All 5 starters scoring double figures, and they're all averaging between 10.4 and 14.4 points per game. So it's only a 4-point spread between all 5 guys. Right. But I think Wheeler-Thomas, not only because he's their leading scorer, but because of the kind of player he is, that he's the one guy who has that kind of athletic dynamism that has given Michigan State some trouble this year. He's the guy I worry about most.
Yeah. All right. So then that thing is something you shouldn't worry about, of course, are your windows, because you're going to have the Squeegee Squad to Grand Rapids take care of them. Head over to our support page at the Final Four, it's not the schedule.com/support. There you can find the links to get a hold of Troy and his team. They'll get you 15% off simply by mentioning Final Four. They'll wash your windows, whether it's your home, business, high rise, whatever it might be. If it's got glass, they can take care of it and clean it. Much like Michigan State does most games. They're 4th offensive rebounding team. And are they back to number 1 defensively rebounding? I think they are.
They never
left. So they're always sitting at 1. So fantastic rebounding team. And of course, the competition is over for the season. I had my episode of shame where I wore the basketball in my head. But this is just exhibition at this point. So I guess we'll have our NCAA tournament competition with no stakes except just pride. And so I get to pick first. I'm going to take Kohler and assume that he's going to get some work done on the glass this game.
I will go with Cooper and Carr. Big surprise.
Big surprise. And this is a tricky one. I do think, I'm torn between Scott and Ward. I guess I'll just go with Ward. I think he still would get a decent run in this game because he'll be able to be more versatile defensively and I think chase people around a little bit. I mean, you could go with Scott, I think. And then it's sort of like just it could be anybody, I guess, at this point. But this is a tough game. This is also a game where I wonder how much you'd see McCullough. I kind of don't tend to think
I
you
think
wouldn't
it's
see much
very
from here.
tough.
Yeah.
Very tough to play Jesse in this one with the matchup.
Yeah. I
Unless
think so
unless
too.
it was just massive foul trouble.
Right. And then we're talking about there's some serious problems, obviously.
Yep.
All right. Well, speaking of Jackson Kohler and clean the glass, head over to Nudge Printing. You can go to nudgeprinting.com and get a hold of the Jackson Kohler collection, where he is his primal scream, whether it's on a t-shirt or hoodie, whatever it might be. He is there. You can also go to nudgeprinting.com/win. There you can enter a drawing for a free Sparty golf hat. It is theoretically spring. I guess the spring equinox is in 5 days. So I think the days start getting longer, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Or I mean, they've been getting longer. Maybe they get, I don't know. It feels like it's not that spring-like out. It was a couple days ago, and now it was snowing again today. So I know at least up north that they've gotten a couple feet of snow. So nothing like that. Now I say that, I'm sure people from North Dakota listening, and I'll never forget. So I trained at Iowa. There were a number of kids there in my program who were from North Dakota, and we would complain about the cold in Iowa because let me tell you, it gets really cold, colder than Iowa than it does in Michigan, just because there's no lake to sort of
Right.
buffer the cold, the wind and stuff. And so, we complain about the cold, and they'd always just look at us like, just shake their head like, it's not cold until you walk outside, your nose freezes shut. That's when you know it's cold. So that's living life in North Dakota. So I feel for those guys. So if you're in North Dakota, feel your pain. But make sure you head on over to nudgeprinting.com. You get 20% off simply by typing in TFFINOTS at checkout. You can get anything in their collection. There are other schools too. I don't believe North Dakota State's one of them, but you can check in the other school section. It's not as prominent as it used to be, but Gabe and his wife Brittany sell their stuff on Amazon quite a bit too. But they sponsor the 5 keys to the game, and we'll begin with the first one, which is guarding the arc. Pretty obvious, since it's a team that shoots a decent amount of threes, not a crazy amount, but they shoot quite a bit of them. And you're looking at upsets for 14s over threes. Generally speaking, it's going to come down to kind of shooting above their pay grade when it comes to three.
That's right. And digging a little deeper, I found this stat, which I felt was maybe not surprising, but interesting. It's a big part of their wins when they do it well. They've averaged 38% from three in their wins, and in their losses, they've hit just 27%. So
there you go.
What that tells us is if they're not shooting threes well, it's probably going to be a bad result for them. They don't seem to be able to overcome bad shooting days very easily. A team like Michigan State can do that. They can win a game where they shoot 25% from three. I'm not sure that North Dakota State can, not at this level, especially. So I look at this team, and as I mentioned earlier, I don't see the kind of dynamism at the guard spots that has really given MSU issues. There's a possibility to face that if and when Michigan State moves through this bracket, but I don't think in this game. But the bottom line is still, this is a team that shoots threes very well. They're in the top, whatever it is, in top 75 in the country.
Yeah.
3-point percentage, and they take a decent amount of them, a little more than average. So that does create a challenge. And bottom line is, however they're creating those looks, if you're Michigan State, you've got to be closing and contesting shots. It's just that simple. Do that well. Hold this team's success rate down, 30% and below. I think it's very difficult to imagine a path for North Dakota State to win it.
Right. What do you see there in KenPom as far as the Michigan State's 3-point defense? I mean, we know the defensive statistics.
It's slipped.
Yeah.
It slipped considerably lately. I believe they're outside of the top 100 now.
Oh, that's quite a bit lower. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, they were very good for a long stretch of this season. But lately, if you think about it, some of these games, UCLA, the Wisconsin loss, Michigan shot the three well against them.
Yep,
They've had games lately where teams have had success. So, yeah, that's not a number that gives you comfort, but we know the reasons why. Largely, the reason why is exactly what I was just talking about. It's that they haven't been able to deal with dynamism at the guard spots, and that's created a lot of good looks for opponents.
And so the second key to the game is, not surprisingly, the boards. Michigan State, as I mentioned, as well, you mentioned before this. So the number one, their top defensive rebounding team, their top four as far as offensive rebounding team. This is a very good rebounding team for North Dakota State, we think. I mean, again, this is going to be a different challenge for them. Just because you're small doesn't mean you're not any good at it. But also, you may not have faced the type of rebounding team that Michigan State is. It could be very different for them as well. So you just don't know how this is going to turn out. But we've seen that that's a success, at least an element for success for Michigan State to win games, but to shut down on the defense, the opponent, and then also get some extra looks in offense.
Michigan State needs to carve out a significant edge here. I don't think there's any doubt about that. North Dakota State, especially given their level and their size, they rebound well, but they're not on Michigan State's level. They're just not. And Michigan State needs to have an advantage. And that means they don't get second chances, and you do generate some second chances on your offensive end.
Right. And you would think, moving to the third key of the game, finishing at the rim, that if you get offensive rebounds, Michigan State, I feel like a lot of them are just kind of around the rim, around the basket close. I mean, obviously, I guess, for rebounding, but that you could put this back in, because you've got a team that is not a lot of shot blockers, right, and they're not a great 2-point defense to begin with. If you're getting especially on scramble-like, sort of situations, offensive rebounds, you think you should be able to get some work done there.
Yep. Look, North Dakota State is a poor defensive team versus twos, and they don't block shots. You know who else was a poor defensive team and doesn't block shots? UCLA. And there's a difference, but you get my point. Michigan State was abjectly horrible in that game against UCLA at the rim. And we have seen that occasionally, although far less frequently, in the second half of the season.
Yes.
And Michigan State has had some recent games where they were actually very good. I think if you're looking for the antidote to the UCLA game, you would go to the game before it, even in a loss against arguably the best interior defense in the country. I don't even think it's arguable. Michigan State's bigs were great.
Yep.
So they have to finish the plays that they should in this game. That's simply put.
And the other thing is, which is quite obvious, which is going to be probably a key or sub key, I guess, through the tournament, is the turnovers. Michigan State has had some stinkers when it comes to turning the ball over, sometimes unforced. And this is a team that actually is going to force it and really, I'm going to guess that they're really going to attack those dribble handoffs and those with Carson Cooper and Kohler. Right. And so they have to be very careful, that because those are the ones, not only do you give up if it's a steal, you're not only just giving the ball away, but you're probably giving up a layup as well. And
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to see them be very aggressive when Michigan State makes post entries either. I just think in general, it's safe to expect them being very aggressive. They kind of don't have a choice. I mean, that's their MO anyway, but when you're this undersized, you've got to do something to try to change the dynamic of the game. And one way you would do that is by being aggressive, bringing extra bodies.
Yeah, doubling.
Right. And seeing what you can make happen, Yep. And so Michigan State has got to be strong with the ball. They got to be solid in their decision-making and just not gift this team a bunch of mistakes, because that's one surefire way to allow them to stay in the game.
Yeah. Boy, you'd really think with a team like this that if they're going to be aggressive on those ball screens, which I think they will be, that they're going to be susceptible to the lobs to Carson Cooper out of that with Jeremy.
You would hope. It's a matter of surviving the initial doubling.
Yeah, exactly.
But honestly, Jeremy's not one of the guys I worry about.
No, not me either. So the fifth and final key of the game is transition. This is always, you enjoy Michigan State the first half of the season, and then you're like, oh, kind of their break's gone. And then you get out of the Big Ten season, you're like, oh, they remembered how to fast break. It's just because teams just are a little bit different. And this is one of those things, again, sort of like, live fire. Like you think you know something until you see it in real life. And so that the blitz and everything that Michigan State does, I imagine we're going to see that they're going to try and blitz them a couple times off made baskets to see if they can catch North Dakota State asleep.
You would think so. And, as I said toward the outset of this, them having Tim Miles on the staff gives them a chance, because at least they've got somebody in their operation who has real life experience dealing with it. But even with that, it comes down to how well does that message get imparted to the players? How effectively do they take it on board and actually do what I'm sure they're going to be instructed to do to try to maintain floor balance? I mean, that's the thing. This is the number 77 offensive rebounding team in the country. So that tells you that's part of their thing. They play that way. But might they call the dogs off against Michigan State just to make sure they've got the floor balanced? I think it's very possible. Because when you're facing the number one defensive rebounding team in the country, even if offensive rebounding is something you do reasonably well, and then you add in the size difference and all of that, I would think you would look at that and say, you know what, fellas, not tonight. Let's just make sure we're getting back. But it's one thing to say it. It's another thing for players to do it, especially when they've been programmed to play differently all year. And so it will be interesting to watch to see if Michigan State is able to get some transition play going. This is, as you said, normally this is the time of the year because you're suddenly dealing with teams who don't have that familiarity with you.
Yeah.
And again, it's not about the coaches. I doubt highly there's a single coach they played in the NCAA tournament over the years that ever said, you know what, we don't need to worry about the transition game.
Right.
I'm sure it's been there, but that is not the deal. That part's fine. It's, as they say, necessary but insufficient.
Yeah.
What is sufficient is when the players take that message and actually execute a game plan to limit it. And that's the hard part. And I don't know what the odds are that we're going to see this team. I just don't have enough familiarity with them. I know they've had a good, solid program. This guy's been there a long time. He's got veteran assistants. They've developed their program from within, something that's tough to do at their level these days. So there are a lot of reasons to have respect for them, but in that area, that's tough.
Yeah. Because it's not something you see every day. It's something that is
they've never
really
seen
weird.
anything like this. Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. And because unless you play North Carolina, right, you've probably not ever seen that sort of attack on the.
That's right.
And it's one of those things too that you can be really good for 15 out of 17 possessions, but that's the problem, right? That those two that you just give up real easy layup in 5 seconds. You're like,
but that is why I spend so much time critiquing Michigan State's consistency with that. It's for that reason. It's one of the reasons why. The other reason is, even if you're not getting transition baskets, you want to put that defense under physical and mental pressure, just in trying to get back consistently. But you're absolutely right that, if it's 17 possessions, if you're Michigan State, fine. You pop 3 of them. That's great. You'll take that.
Yeah, it's funny. I know the coaching staff is not like this because they're smart, but like if you're like us, where you're like, you didn't know anything about Michigan State, you just look at them on paper, you're like, oh, they're a super slow team. Their tempo is really, really slow. They're like one of the slowest teams in the country. 270 something or 80th and out of 350 teams.
Well, that's overall tempo. That's
well, I know, but
their average length of offensive possession is more like middle of the pack.
Yeah, but it still doesn't look like a fast team. Like you could be fooled into thinking, oh, this is a team that's going to take their time. They're not like, racing. Like Michigan, you look at it and say, okay, their offensive possession is like what, top 20 or something. So this is a fast team, but this is not the case for Michigan State. But again, you could be fooled, which is what which almost seemed like what happened to Ben McCullum. Like he just seemed surprised. He said, I thought they played slower. They played really fast on us. But again, that was sort of like, I don't know.
Again, it's when I tend to think it's not the coaches not recognizing it, as you're saying. It's more that players, it is very hard to truly simulate what Michigan State does. Until you're dealing with it, it's just a different thing. So few, it really is. We mentioned North Carolina, as you just did, because truthfully, they're the only other ones at the high major level who play this way. we've talked about Michigan. Yeah, Michigan likes to play fast, but Michigan doesn't play the way Michigan State does.
Yep, totally different. Yeah,
It's a different thing.
yeah. So before we go, I just want to ask you a couple of things first. So before we wrap up here, some news came out which I thought was very interesting. So there's two things to do with Alabama, and Alabama is of somewhat interest for Big Ten fans because, of course, they're in the same bracket, the 4 seed, I think, or the 5 seed, 4 seed. The potential matchup against Arkansas, the second round, of course, the Sweet 16 would be against Michigan, likely as the 1 seed. So Bediako is the guy who played for Alabama, played 4 or 5 games, maybe, came from the G League, had a temporary injunction by a judge, allowed him to play, and then another judge ruled that temporary injunction was inappropriate or improper, or whatever. So anyway, so he was not allowed by the NCAA to play. So he left the team basically. I mean, I'm sure he still kept taking classes, but sure. he was appealing that. And of course he dropped his appeal because at this point, it doesn't matter. It's not going to get done before the NCAA tournament. And he wants to go back and, play somewhere else. I mean, obviously. So that's just kind of an interesting sort of side note. But the other one, big news, of course, is one of their leading players, Holloway, was arrested on felony charges for drug possession of over a pound of marijuana in his apartment or something like that. He's on a bail. He's probably not going to be allowed to leave the state. So he's been removed from. He's no longer a student, I guess, or he's at least suspended or temporarily suspended or something like that in Alabama. The last I saw. I originally thought, this is a guy, being Nate Oates, who kind of lets all this stuff just sort of go and just like, well, kids made mistakes or whatever. It feels to me like this could be something that might be out of Nate Oates' hands because, he let a kid who was in a murder sort of investigation play. But this seems like something he's not going to be able to kind of wrap up in the next 2 or 3 days whenever they need to play. So I think he's probably out, don't you?
I don't know. I don't know enough about how Alabama would be inclined to handle such a case.
You mean the state or the university?
The state. State. Because you're right. You're right about this being now a criminal justice matter. It's not about, Nate Oates wants to play him. That's got nothing to do with it.
Because he totally played him for sure.
We know that. Yeah, that's not even a question. But will he be able? You're telling me something. I have not delved into this. You're telling me something I did not know, but I guess intuitively makes a little bit of sense that he might be prevented from leaving the state while this is ongoing. I don't know whether what machinations might be available to Alabama to make this happen and allow him to play. I do know that I would expect them to try everything possible.
Right.
They do. Yeah. It's a tough one. I just finished making my picks and I picked Alabama to go to the Sweet 16, knowing that he's tenuous, but I just have this feeling that he's probably going to play. And in truth, they might be able to still get by those first 2 games without him. I think it would sink them against Michigan for sure.
Right.
But anyway, we'll see. Yeah, it is an interesting note.
Yeah. A pound of marijuana, that is more than just for personal use. I think that's the rub. We know, even if it's legal in most states or half the states or whatever it is, that kind of puts you on dealer status. So it's a little hard to sort of explain that away. Any final thoughts about this game or anything else with the tournament before we get out of here?
Well, I think, and I felt this way when we were doing our show last night about the draw. It's not that North Dakota State's not a good team. In fact, by some measures, they might be the best 14. But that's not really the relevant question. It's, are they the toughest 14 matchup for Michigan State? And I don't think they are. I think they're a good team. They're certainly one that's capable of winning if Michigan State does not play well, if they don't bring appropriate focus, but I think they will. So I'm expecting Michigan State to win. It could be uncomfortable at certain points, but I'm expecting a low double-digit win. 11 points, 12 points, something like that. And I think they'll play reasonably well. and set themselves up to have another shot to make it to yet another second weekend in an NCAA tournament for Tom Izzo.
Yeah, I don't know. I always wonder what the other side is thinking. Like, what does North Dakota State feel like? Do they feel like they would rather taken on Virginia or Gonzaga, or I'm trying to think the other three
Hard to
seed
know.
is? Yeah,
I mean,
at that point, maybe you don't.
I will
Doesn't
say
matter. You're just happy.
say this. I'm not really particularly a believer in Virginia. They've had a nice year, but I'm not really a believer in them. You know how I feel about Illinois. They're another three.
That's right. Yeah.
Um,
That's the other three. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Michigan State is, if you compared them to Illinois, you would say, well, Illinois has got the greater potential to just blow it out.
Right.
Because of the way they play, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that would make you lean toward, well, see Michigan State, but Michigan State's advantages here, I think, are substantial physically and in terms of how they play. And I'm not sure that the things that North Dakota State does best are the type of the way that they get there by the method that would be likeliest to give Michigan State the biggest problems.
Yeah.
You could say, well, they shoot the three well, but how are they generating those threes? I'm not sure that that's something Michigan State can't potentially handle to some degree.
All right. Well, we will leave it there. We'll be back live after the game. I think it should be right as soon as the game ends. We'll be able to go online. We'll be on live. You can join us YouTube or on X or Instagram. Please join us then. You can come in and join the show, comment. That, of course, is a reminder to head on to slido.com. That's SLIDO.com. Hashtag TFFINOTS. That allows you to pick who you think is the Michigan State player of the game. We'll talk about it after the game, of course. And then also visit all our sponsors at our support page at the Final Four, schedule.com/support. Good Brothers, Just Your Gutters, Squeegee Squad Grand Rapids, Nudge Printing, and of course, Fanduel. So you can give them some of your money. All right. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.